My name is Jenna Brooks, and I'm 35 years old. At my younger brother's wedding reception in a beautiful venue here in Atlanta, Georgia, my sister-in-law's family deliberately seated me in a dark corner right next to the restroom. When I arrived at the table, Paige's mother looked me up and down, smirked, and said, "You can sit here." My brother laughed along with them and added, "Just sit here for now." Everyone at the surrounding tables turned, smirked, and whispered. The humiliation hit hard, but I didn't react. I just gave them the same polite smile I'd perfected over the years, stood up quietly, and walked straight out of the room without a word. They had no idea I was the one who had quietly paid for most of the wedding, the venue deposit, the catering, the flowers, the DJ, everything that made their perfect day possible. By the time the night ended and the final bills came due the next morning, the venue manager called the groom's side because the remaining balance, tens of thousands of dollars, had never been settled. That's when the panic started. My phone exploded. Call after call, text after text from my brother, his new wife, and their families, all of them losing their minds, demanding to know why I would do this, screaming that I had ruined everything. They thought they could treat me like dirt in front of everyone and I'd just take it. They were wrong. By the time I got home that night, my phone was already blowing up. The screen lit up non-stop with notifications, missed calls, and a flood of texts that kept coming one after another. They were all from the same people: my younger brother Sean Brooks, who's 30, his new wife Paige Brooks, and my parents. The messages rolled in fast, each one angrier than the last, all blaming me for the same thing. "You ruined everything. How could you just walk out like that? You embarrassed the whole family in front of everyone. No one asked if I was okay or why I left." It was just accusation after accusation, like they were all reading from the same script. The texts overlapped, some from group chats, others direct. I sat on the couch in my quiet apartment, watching the names flash across the screen, feeling that old familiar weight settle in my chest again. Sean called first. I let it ring out, but he immediately followed up with a voicemail that I played on speaker. His voice was loud, frustrated, the same tone he used whenever things didn't go his way. "Jenna, pick up. You can't just disappear and leave us to deal with this mess. If you hadn't made a scene by storming out, the venue wouldn't be chasing us for the final payment right now. This is on you." Then Paige jumped in with her own string of texts, sharper and more pointed. "We look like idiots because of you. Everyone's asking what happened and we have no explanation. You owe us for this. My parents weren't far behind. Dad sent a short, cold message, 'Call me back.' We need to sort this out." Mom's were longer, laced with that disappointed edge she always used. "Sweetie, whatever you're feeling, we can talk about it. But walking away like that hurt your brother on his big day." The calls kept coming back to back. I finally answered one from Sean because the constant ringing was getting to me. He didn't even let me speak at first. "Seriously, Jenna, what were you thinking? The manager called this morning saying the balance is overdue, and now vendors are emailing too. You know we're counting on you to handle this." That's when the accusations shifted. Paige texted again, this time in the family group. "You act like you're above us, but you didn't contribute a thing to make today happen." Reading that line stung more than the others because it was so far from the truth. For years, I had been the one keeping things afloat without anyone asking. When Sean was in college and racking up debt, I covered large chunks of his tuition and living costs so he wouldn't drop out. After graduation, when he bounced between jobs and couldn't make rent, I paid for their apartment month after month, telling myself it was temporary. And this wedding, I had quietly transferred over half the total cost up front for the venue, catering, flowers, and DJ, because Sean had been unemployed for over a year, and they couldn't secure the bookings otherwise. But I never threw it in their faces. I just did it because he was my brother, and I thought family looked out for each other. Now they were pretending none of that existed. Sean called again, and this time I picked up. "You need to transfer the rest right now," he said, voice rising. "Fix this before it gets worse." The venue threatened to send it to collections if it's not paid by end of week. Dad got on a three-way call with him shortly after. "Listen to your brother," he said firmly. "You caused this problem, so you clean it up. We're all stressed enough." Mom tried a softer approach in her voicemails, but the message was the same. "Please, Jenna, don't let this tear us apart. Just take care of the bill and we can move past it." The demands piled on through the evening and into the next day. Texts from Paige's side of the family started trickling in. Two people I barely knew echoing the same outrage. It felt like the entire group had closed ranks against me overnight. By late afternoon, Sean sent the final push, a long voice note that ended with the ultimatum. "If you don't fix this, we're done with you. Don't expect to be part of this family anymore." I listened to every message read, every text, but I didn't reply to a single one. The anger was there, hot and sharp, but underneath it was something colder, the realization that they truly saw me as nothing more than a solution to their problems. I saved the screenshots, backed up the voicemails, and let the silence stretch on my end. They had no idea what was coming. A few days later, the attacks moved online. Since I hadn't responded to any of their messages or transferred the money, the strategy changed, and it spread to social media, where they knew I would see it. Paige posted first on her Instagram story a vague photo of the wedding reception hall with a caption that read something like, "Some people only show up to cause drama and then vanish when things get real." She didn't tag me or use my name, but the timing and the subtle details made it obvious who she meant, especially to our shared circle of friends and extended family. Sean followed with a post on Facebook sharing a group photo from the wedding, but cropping me out entirely, adding a long note about how grateful he was for everyone who truly supported us through this special time, and how disappointing it was when certain people let selfishness get in the way. Again, no direct mention of me, but the comments section exploded almost immediately with people from Paige's side of the family piling on. Her relatives, aunts, cousins, even some I had only met once or twice, left heart emojis and messages like, "So sorry you had to deal with that on your big day," or "Real family shows up in good times and bad." Sean's old college friends chimed in too, some of them tagging each other with laughing reactions and inside jokes that clearly referenced the seating arrangement drama. The notifications rolled in steadily as likes and shares climbed, turning what started as subtle shade into a full public pile-on. I scrolled through it all one evening after work, sitting at my kitchen table in Atlanta with a cup of coffee going cold beside me. The sheer number of people weighing in, many of whom barely knew the full story, made the isolation feel heavier than the private messages ever had. It wasn't just my immediate family anymore. They had pulled in a wider audience to reinforce their version of events. I didn't reply to any of it, didn't defend myself in the comments or post anything of my own. Engaging would only feed the narrative they were building, so I kept scrolling in silence, screenshotting the worst ones for my records while the sting built layer by layer. Then, out of nowhere, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. The voice on the other end was calm, measured, and unfamiliar at first. "Hi, Jenna. This is Mason Carter, Paige's brother." He paused as if giving me a moment to place him, then continued without waiting too long. "I hope it's okay that Paige gave me your number. I wanted to talk to you directly about what's been going on." I stayed quiet, waiting for him to get to the point. Mason explained that he had seen the posts and heard Sean's side of things, how I had supposedly refused to help and caused unnecessary stress right after the wedding. But something didn't add up for him. He had heard Paige mention over the years how I was always the reliable one, the sister who lived quietly, worked steadily, and never made waves. The picture Sean painted of me being selfish and stingy just didn't match the person she had described in passing conversations. More than that, Mason admitted he was calling for his own reasons. With the family names now tied together through the marriage, any ongoing conflict could spill over and affect how people viewed the Carters too. He didn't want vague rumors dragging his side into unnecessary gossip, especially when he suspected there might be more to the story than what Sean was sharing. I listened without interrupting, surprised that anyone from their circle was reaching out like this. When he finished, I kept my response short and factual. "If you want the truth, I can send you some things." He agreed, so I forwarded a few bank statements showing the large transfers I had made over the years, along with screenshots of old messages from Sean, where he casually referred to me as his personal bank after I covered yet another expense. Mason thanked me for the information and said he appreciated the clarity. There was a long pause on the line before he spoke again. "I need some time to think this through," he said quietly, his tone no longer as confident as when the call started. We ended the conversation there with no promises or follow-ups. For the first time since everything escalated, a small crack had appeared in their united front, and I could feel the shift even through the phone. The doubt was planted, and I knew it wouldn't disappear easily. About a week after that call, Mason texted me again. The message was simple, just a series of screenshots attached without any explanation or greeting. I opened them while sitting in traffic on my way home from work in downtown Atlanta, and what I saw made my grip tighten on the steering wheel. The images showed private messages from Sean to two of the bridesmaids, the ones who had been closest to Paige during the wedding planning. The conversations had started innocently enough right after the ceremony, but quickly turned flirty, with Sean sending compliments about how they looked in their dresses and suggesting late-night meetups during the honeymoon trip. One thread in particular stood out where he told one of them that marrying Paige was the safe choice, but he couldn't stop thinking about what could have been with her. The timestamps proved it all happened while he and Paige were supposed to be celebrating their new life together in the Caribbean. Mason had clearly gone through Paige's phone or Sean's social media direct messages to find these, and forwarding them to me meant he was now fully invested in uncovering whatever else was hidden. I stared at the screen for a long moment after pulling into my parking spot, feeling a mix of confirmation and cold anger. This wasn't completely shocking. Sean had always chased attention, but seeing it laid out so blatantly, especially so soon after the vows, hit differently. I typed back a short reply. "I thought so." That was all I said, but it seemed to be enough for Mason, who didn't respond further. Within days, the fallout started rippling through their household. Paige began questioning Sean about late nights on his phone during their trip, piecing together odd comments from the bridesmaids who had grown distant suddenly. Arguments erupted loud enough that neighbors in their apartment building mentioned hearing raised voices through the walls. Sean tried to downplay it at first, claiming the messages were harmless jokes taken out of context, but the evidence was too clear. Paige's trust cracked wide open, and their once perfect newlywed bliss turned into constant tension. Friends who had attended the wedding started noticing the shift too, with group chats going quiet whenever the couple's name came up. Then Sean reached out to me directly, calling late one evening when I was unwinding with a book. His voice sounded strained, nothing like the confident tone he used when demanding money before. "Jenna, we need to talk," he started, but quickly veered into pleading. "Whatever Mason sent you, please delete it. It's not what it looks like. I was just messing around, stressed from the wedding stuff." I let him talk, listening as he unraveled further. He admitted checking the bridesmaids' social media more than he should have, sending messages he regretted, but swore it never went physical. The panic in his words grew with every sentence, as if he could sense the marriage slipping away. "Paige is freaking out, and if she believes this is real, it'll end everything. You're my sister. You can't let this destroy us." The desperation peaked when he said it outright. "Please don't say anything to Paige. You'll destroy us." Hearing him beg like that after all the accusations he had thrown my way shifted something inside me. For years, I had been the one fixing problems, smoothing things over, taking the blame to keep peace. Now the tables had turned completely, and the power to expose or protect rested solely in my hands. I didn't commit to silence or promise anything. Instead, I ended the call politely and set the phone down, letting the weight of his words settle. The truth wasn't mine to hide anymore. It was a weapon sharp and ready, and for the first time I felt in full control of when to use it. 2 weeks of tense silence passed. During that time, the rumors spread quietly but steadily through our circles in Atlanta. People who had attended the wedding started talking in private messages and at local gatherings, wondering aloud why the newlyweds seemed so strained so soon and what really happened when I left the reception. Some friends we shared from college reached out indirectly through mutual acquaintances, asking if everything was okay at home without wanting to get too involved. The perfect image Paige and Sean had curated for their big day began to crack in ways they couldn't control. Invites to casual barbecues or community events in the neighborhood dried up for them, replaced by polite excuses or sudden schedule conflicts. I heard through a coworker who knew Paige's cousin that guests were whispering about the unpaid vendor balances and how the venue had sent follow-up emails threatening late fees. The story shifted from celebration to cautionary tale almost overnight. My parents felt the pressure too. Dad, who golfed with the same group every weekend, came home quieter than usual after rounds where conversations veered toward family drama. Mom stopped posting her usual proud updates about the wedding photos and instead shared generic quotes about forgiveness that everyone knew were aimed at me. The weight of public opinion turning against them became impossible to ignore. Then the invitation arrived. It came in a group text from Mom, carefully worded to sound casual and healing. We're hosting a small thank you dinner for close family and a few guests who helped with the wedding at that new Italian place downtown. It would mean a lot if you could come. We just want to talk as a family and clear the air. The restaurant was one of the upscale spots in Midtown Atlanta, known for private booths and elegant atmosphere, the kind of place that signaled importance. I read between the lines immediately. This wasn't about reconciliation or hearing my side. With the gossip growing and vendors possibly taking legal steps for the outstanding bills they needed to pull me back into the fold, publicly show unity, and pressure me into paying quietly to make the problem disappear. A dinner with witnesses would limit what I could say and give them a stage to portray forgiveness if I cooperated. Sean added his own message shortly after, keeping it light on the surface. "It'll be good to see you, sis. Let's put all this behind us." Paige sent a separate text with a heart emoji saying she missed hanging out and hoped we could start fresh. Mason stayed silent in the chat, which told me more than any words could. I thought about declining outright, letting the distance grow. But the more I considered it, the clearer the opportunity became. Attending on my terms could force everything into the open in a setting they chose, surrounded by people they cared about impressing. I replied simply that I would be there without committing to anything else or asking questions. In the days leading up to the dinner, I prepared carefully. I organized every piece of evidence on my phone, the bank records of transfers over the years, the old messages mocking me, the screenshots Mason had sent of Sean's inappropriate conversations. I backed everything up to the cloud and made sure the files loaded quickly with one tap. No notebooks or printouts that could be taken away, just digital proof ready to share if needed. The evening approached faster than expected. As I chose what to wear, something simple and understated, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This wasn't about mending fences or explaining myself anymore. They had drawn the line with their actions, and now they wanted me to cross back over it. I decided to go. Not to talk. To end it. The restaurant was packed that evening. The downtown Atlanta spot buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses as servers moved between tables loaded with plates of pasta and wine bottles. Our group sat in a large corner booth meant for celebration, surrounded by a mix of close relatives and a few wedding vendors they had invited as guests of honor. The lighting was warm, the music soft in the background, everything designed to look like a gracious family gathering. Dad started the conversation almost immediately after the appetizers arrived, leaning forward with that familiar stern expression he used when he thought someone needed correcting. "Jenna, we asked you here because this has gone on long enough," he said, keeping his voice low but firm. "Your actions have hurt everyone, especially your brother, during what should have been the happiest time of his life. It's time to act like an adult and move past the selfishness." Mom nodded along, reaching across the table as if to pat my hand, but stopping short. "We're all family here. No one wants this division. You've always been the responsible one, so we know you can make this right." Sean sat back with his arms crossed, playing the wounded role perfectly, eyes downcast like he was holding back emotion. "I just wanted my sister there for the big moments," he said quietly, glancing around the table for sympathy. Walking out and then ignoring us, it made everything so much harder. Paige stayed silent beside him, her face tight and pale hands clasped in her lap. She avoided looking at me directly, staring instead at the tablecloth as if it held answers. The tension radiating from her was obvious to everyone, but no one addressed it. I listened to them take turns laying out their version of events, painting me as the one who had turned a joyful occasion into chaos over nothing. The words were carefully chosen for the audience, full of sighs and disappointed headshakes. It didn't take long for the truth to hit me fully. This dinner wasn't about understanding or apology. It was a performance to save face and corner me into compliance in front of witnesses. When the main courses arrived and the conversation circled back to how I needed to fix things, I felt the calm I had carried in solidify into something sharper. I pulled out my phone without a word, connected wirelessly to the large screen mounted on the wall near our booth, one the restaurant used for private events and sports games. The manager had left the system open for ambient slideshows, and it took only seconds to mirror my display. The first thing I played was a video clip from the security camera in the apartment I used to let Sean and Paige stay in rent-free. It showed Sean lounging on the couch with his best friend Brad Thompson, both of them holding beers and laughing loudly. Sean's voice came through clear on the speakers. "Jenna's always so predictable. She'll complain a little but end up covering whatever we need. It's almost too easy." The table went still as the clip continued, with Brad chuckling and Sean mocking how I thought helping made me part of their lives. Heads turned toward the screen, forks paused halfway to mouths. Dad's face reddened. Mom's hand flew to her chest, and Sean shifted uncomfortably, eyes wide. I didn't pause long before switching to the next set of screenshots, old text threads, where Sean referred to me repeatedly as his walking ATM after I sent money for their bills or emergencies. The messages scrolled slowly enough for everyone to read dates and amounts visible. Whispers started at nearby tables as people noticed the screen. A few phones came out discreetly to record. The final blow was the evidence of Sean's cheating, the screenshots Mason had forwarded, showing flirtatious exchanges with two bridesmaids during what was supposed to be a romantic honeymoon. The explicit suggestions and dismissive comments about Paige being the safe choice filled the display in black and white. Paige made a choked sound, her chair scraping back as she stood halfway, tears streaming down her face. She stared at Sean in disbelief, hands trembling. "Is this real?" she whispered, voice breaking. Sean reached for her arm, stammering excuses, but she pulled away sharply. Mason, seated at the end of the booth, pushed his plate aside and stood up fully. "That's enough," he said loudly enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "Jenna's shown us the truth tonight. My sister deserves better than lies, and so does everyone else here." The room fell into heavy silence, broken only by muffled gasps from other diners and the distant kitchen noise. Servers hovered awkwardly nearby, unsure whether to intervene. Relatives who had been nodding along earlier now looked down at their plates, avoiding eye contact. I disconnected my phone, slipped it into my pocket, and stood. No one tried to stop me as I walked through the crowded restaurant toward the exit, the weight of every stare following me out the door. The cool Atlanta night air hit my face, and for the first time in years, I breathed freely. A month after that dinner, I filed the lawsuit. The decision came quietly one morning while I sat in my office overlooking the Atlanta skyline. I had spent the previous weeks gathering every receipt, bank statement, and wire transfer record into a single organized folder. Laura, My old college friend, now practicing law in the city, reviewed it all with a calm professionalism that made the process feel less overwhelming. She confirmed what I already suspected: the pattern of payments I had made to Sean and Paige over the years qualified as unjust enrichment, and the lack of any repayment or acknowledgement opened the door to fraud claims. We met in her downtown office the following week to finalize the complaint. Laura drafted the petition with precision, detailing the total amount I had advanced: more than $50,000 for the wedding expenses alone, plus years of rent payments and other support during Sean's unemployment periods. The suit sought full repayment plus compensatory damages for emotional distress caused by the deliberate exploitation and public humiliation. Filing was straightforward. The clerk at the Fulton County Superior Court accepted the documents without fanfare, stamping them and assigning a case number. Sean and Paige were served shortly after at their apartment. I wasn't there for that part, but Laura told me Sean had gone pale when the process server handed him the papers, while Paige stared in disbelief. Discovery moved quickly. We submitted the full chain of evidence: the bank transfers, emails where I asked for repayment and received no response, even the old texts where Sean joked about me being the family ATM. Their side tried to counter with claims that the money was gifts from a willing family member, but the sheer volume and consistency of the payments undermined that argument. Laura filed motions to compel, and when their responses came back incomplete, the judge issued sanctions. The day of the hearing arrived faster than expected. The courtroom in downtown Atlanta was small and functional, with wood-paneled walls and rows of benches filled with a handful of observers and family members. Sean and Paige sat on one side with their attorney, looking smaller than they had at the wedding. Dad and Mom were in the gallery, faces tight with a mix of anger and worry. Mason attended too, though he sat on the opposite side. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, listened as Laura presented the case step by step. She projected the key documents on the screen. Large transfers dated right before the wedding venue, booking, rent payments during Sean's jobless stretches, and the complete lack of any loan agreement or repayment plan. When the cheating screenshots were introduced as context for the breakdown in trust, Sean's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed them, noting they showed the pattern of deceit. Sean took the stand next. He tried to explain the money away as family help he always intended to pay back, but his voice cracked under cross-examination. When Laura asked why he had mocked me in messages while accepting the funds, he looked down and mumbled something about being frustrated. The judge's expression hardened. Paige didn't testify. She sat beside Sean, eyes red from what looked like recent crying, hands folded tightly in her lap. Dad spoke briefly from the gallery, attempting to frame it as a private family matter that didn't belong in court, but the judge reminded him this was a civil action for financial recovery. After closing arguments, the judge recessed for deliberation. We waited in the hallway, the silence thick with anticipation. Sean paced near the water fountain, glancing at me once but looking away quickly. Mom approached once, whispering, "Please, Jenna, think about what this does to us." But I stepped back without answering. The verdict came in under an hour. The judge ruled in my favor on all counts. Sean and Paige were ordered to repay the full amount plus interest and a substantial sum for emotional distress. The decision cited clear abuse of trust and unjust enrichment, with no credible evidence of any intent to repay. Sean's credit would be severely impacted, making future loans or rentals difficult. Outside the courtroom, the family clustered together in the hallway. Dad tried one last time, voice low and urgent. "We can work this out privately. Don't do this to your brother." Mom's eyes were wet, pleading silently. Sean just stared at the floor, defeated. I looked at them for a long moment, then turned and walked away without a word. The doors closed behind me, and the echo of my footsteps down the marble corridor felt like the final chapter closing. In the months that followed, the consequences hit them hard. Sean's financial situation unraveled quickly under the weight of the court-ordered payments. He had to sell the luxury car he loved, showing off first, listing it online at a steep discount just to get quick cash. Potential buyers came and went, some recognizing him from wedding photos that still circulated in local groups, whispering about the lawsuit as they test drove it. The sale covered only part of the debt, so furniture and electronics followed the big screen TV designer watches, even some wedding gifts he tried to return quietly. Paige reached her breaking point soon after. The combination of public exposure and mounting bills pushed their marriage past repair. She filed for divorce without much fanfare, packing her things while Sean was at a temporary job interview. Friends told me she moved back to her parents' house in the suburbs outside Georgia, taking only what fit in her car and leaving behind the life they had built on borrowed money. The ripple effect reached my parents, too. Dad's golf buddies grew distant, conversations turning awkward whenever family came up. Invites to neighborhood cookouts stopped arriving for them, replaced by polite nods at the grocery store instead of warm chats. Mom removed most of the wedding photos from her social media, and when old acquaintances asked about the newlyweds, she changed the subject quickly. The Brooks name, once associated with stability in our Atlanta community, now carried quiet judgment wherever they went. Mason kept his distance from the fallout on his sister's side, focusing on his own life while occasionally checking in with me through brief texts. He never apologized for his family, but the space he created spoke volumes. As for me, the silence from their end grew permanent after I blocked every number and account connected to them. No more unexpected calls or guilt-laden messages. The absence felt strange at first, like missing a limb I had carried too long, but it soon turned into relief, pure and steady. I invested the recovered money wisely, paid off lingering debts of my own, and started traveling on weekends to places I had always put off. Life became lighter decisions, mine alone. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't the money lost or even the public confrontation. It was realizing how long I had accepted being the fixer, the one who gave without limit, because blood was supposed to mean unconditional everything. But family isn't an excuse for exploitation. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty. It's self-respect, the kind that lets you breathe again. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you for listening all the way through. These experiences are tough to share, but hearing from viewers who relate or find strength in them makes it worthwhile. What about you? Have you ever had to set hard boundaries with family? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this resonated, give the video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it today.